for either efficiency or lifetime. And I think it would be appropriate to begin with our keynote speaker, Professor Holmlin, to answer the question. But the rest of you will get a few minutes to think of your own answer. So, Case, please kick us off.
So, the answer of an icon in the field is work harder. So that doesn't help very much. Yeah, well, I'm a materials guy, so I think that there's a lot still to do in terms of improving the materials. So it's a matter of getting all those parameters good, right? And solubility and stability and compatibility with something else, whether it's a donor or a separate. I didn't mention yet about which did I?
So I think and stability, mobility, all the well-known things, but you have to have all of them together. And then another important thing I think is that it should be processable from a green solvent, because I think it's really time that organic electronics goes green. We still work with monsters like chlorobenzene and dichlorobenzene, and they're really not very nice. So we should really try to get away from that. Previously I was mentioning things like enzymatically produced semiconductors, biodegradable semiconductors, right? So if you do that, you go into the direction of water-stable materials anyway, which is maybe a very good idea, because those solar cells are going to be out there. So all of that, I think there's still an enormous amount of work to do in order, and to get progress there. I am really not the guy to talk about what to do on the devices in order to improve them. But at the end, I think we should be careful to be too sophisticated. We should be extremely smart in coming up with a real low-tech answer, because otherwise it's too expensive. The only reason that we're here is the promise that it would be cheap, because the consumer, the buyer, is not interested in how it works. They have no idea. They don't want to know how it works. Right? Whatever smart stuff we put in there, 50 years of research, nobody cares. The only thing is that it has to last 20 years and be almost for free. That's it. That's the only thing. And that takes a whole lot of brain work.
So PV is a commodity product.
At the end, yes. I think I'm a firm believer that it will be. I'm a firm believer that in 20, 30 years from now we will be able to produce a very useful material product at let's say somewhere around 10,000 square kilometers a year. Because that's where you have to be if you want to be a significant player in the energy market. And I think it's roughly 10,000 square kilometers a year. It's very doable, by the way, with OPV, because if you work with a thin film technology, and then especially with lightweight materials, it's something like maximum somewhere anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 tons, which is a fine chemical. It's nothing. So.
Real quick, so in terms of water chemistry-based materials, is there anything that's been done, or just open field?
Well, speed up PSS.
Good point.
No, speed up PSS is not water soluble, but at least it's stable, right?
Yep.
So I think it's a marvelous example of something that is already there. But I'm also pretty sure that there are very novel ways to get to other design principles to make water soluble and water stable molecules, semiconductors.
Why don't we start, Matilda? Would you like to continue the discussion? So we'll just pass the mic down.
Thought that was the safest seat. How wrong I am. Efficiency. Without probably giving away too much what I'm thinking, I think we really need new architectures. The key is seen on the performance growth, that the current architecture will be exhausted probably in 2-3 years. We'll hit that, whatever, the 10% or 11 or maybe 15%. So we need a new architecture and have to very carefully look where the losses are. And I don't think, of course it's a good idea to think about third generation, but there's another 20% even within the single junction limits. So I think that's for the efficiency. And in the stability case, where we recently started to work on water splitting, and that is even more difficult. So the stability of a catalyst is even more complicated. There are some recent new catalysts which seem to have a self-repair mechanism. I think if you can learn from that, where maybe the dynamic response of a solar cell, whatever degradation mechanism is operating, has a built-in self-repair mechanism on the long term. I think that would be an interesting idea to explore. So probably that's it.
And that melds well with the theme of their conference, so complex self-assembly, self-healing material.
Okay, so I guess the organizing principle, efficiency looks good, right? I mean, the growth is very rapid, so it doesn't seem inconceivable that 10% could be very close. And then if you have faith in organic chemicals, right, 500 tons is nothing, so the cost should scale down. And then it seems to me the biggest question is stability, and I don't know, there hasn't been that much work done on it, and I don't really know how to study it, because it's rare events that cause the instability, right? The quantum yield for most organic molecules to decompose is something like 10 to the minus 6. And so this isn't an organizing principle, it's just that seems to be where a big question is. And I know from talking to, again, my silicon friends, that one of their big knocks is you'll never get financing to make an organic solar farm because nobody knows if they'll last 20 years. I mean, you can accelerate it, right? And I don't know how to answer that question, and I don't know, I don't know if people have, I think it's a problem to study, very rare events which will control the photostability of its materials. And so I think that's like a physics type question that it's not clear how you would study it. Like, I don't know how to study those types of rare events, but I think that's going to be one of the things that will control the future of organic electronics or organic photovoltaics.
Maybe I can answer something. It that during the time of the OLED, basically, I was working, and those devices used to die very quickly, maybe in 1 hour during the unit testing time. And at that time, we were already thinking about they will last for at least 10,000 hours. Now at this time, it has been already proved in the OLED case that they can last for 1 million hours. So if the OLED material can last for 1 million hours, I'm very confident for the solar cell. They should not be any problem. Just need to get the right efficiency, and if the efficiency is right, then the stability can be improved.
Yeah, but the environment is a little bit more harsh. So it's good that first there were OLEDs and now there's PV.
Is anybody involved in this consortium on the round-robin test currently going on?
NREL was a part of the first one. I think there's a second round that's gone out.
Yeah, we're taking part one of them from the private test group.
Right.
So far, very promising. Just telling with that.
Well, there's another thing. It's good to make it stable and last long, but also that has to be for free.
Right. And for instance, purifying a chemical to the degree necessary may increase the cost.
That's also a matter of knowing how to do it. Once you know, then it doesn't.
I definitely don't know, but I think you do.
Okay, well, I would like to pick up on a point from Keith, the point about green solvents. Why don't you just skip this step and go to vacuum? No, definitely this is one big issue, even though we're working mainly with vacuum deposited, is that there's still a couple of materials or chemicals being involved which are or can be replaced. One thing is, do we have to stay on oil or crude oil based chemistry, or are there other routes to making the devices? But now going a little bit more towards your question about what self-organization or any, what issues in this field can be addressed in terms of efficiency and simplicity, I would like to have a material which has an exciton diffusion length of 100 nanometers. That would solve a couple of problems, and if that doesn't exist, definitely have the self-organization in the mixed layer as easy and as stable as possible. So people are just starting to step by step understand how to molecular structure and their effect on morphology. And if that's thermodynamically stable, then this is something which can last. And that improves the lifetime as well, at least the demixing, which is sometimes observed under aging. And else, lifetime, at one point self-healing, or at least having some kind of capture molecules included in the device which capture radicals or the species which could do harm, definitely help.
Well, I'm actually quite a bit of an optimist in this case. I think we're pretty much already there in that we have pretty high efficiencies growing. There's a lot of demonstrations of long stability. I mean, as long as you keep oxygen out, that sort of thing. So that's an engineering problem at that point. But I think what really matters at this point is if you want success in this, like Kay says, you need to make it extremely cheap. If you want to be competing with anybody else in this field, it needs to be dirt cheap. It needs to be being spewed out by the kilometer per hour. That sort of rate is what's necessary. A good example of how this can be done is basically the photographic industry, which for many years has produced many times the surface areas that we need in OPV type applications. Very complex structures, multi-layers, I mean, so the tandem structures basically, so multiple layers, different dyes, there's silver in there, very well controlled thicknesses of these layers. I think the technology is already there. It's an engineering problem at that point.
My personal thinking, maybe one possible solution is like this, what I will call the design the molecular arrangement or superstructure. Maybe this is one solution. But what kind of structure maybe can achieve a high efficiency? This we need like material, the theory, also the different people with different background try work together. Also, I think it's a very important thing. Try to bring the new people in this area. Maybe can bring the new idea. Yeah. Also, even this morning, actually, I want to ask you a question. You used like tandem cell have already achieved very high efficiency. For example, you use the zinc for the signing. Also, use the copper 60. But a lot of people use like copper for the signing and the PCBA. I can see if you like the material and device group work together, okay, why you use like zinc complex? Why you don't use other? Because I suppose you have already optimized. You say maybe zinc for the signing is better than copper, but I can see for this like area, I think it's very important things. We need to bring some people with different expertise, try work together. I think this workshop just gave us a great opportunity. Also, I learned a lot of great things. Thank you.
Were you going to comment on copper zinc?
They are pretty much comparable. those two materials are pretty much comparable. I think one part of the reason why we're mainly working with zinc is historically grown. We've got most expertise in zinc. There are other groups working mostly with copper phthalocyanine. They give comparable performance. So, yeah. But you're right. Being here, discussing with across the different disciplines, from both fundamental studies and theoretical studies in chemistry to device physics, having this and those people talk to each other, I think is very, very important, and I think community has learned that over the past few, I would say 5-10 years, that a physicist alone cannot do it, a chemist alone cannot do it. So there's so many things which need to be translated from fundamental studies to device performance. It's great to have this meeting.
Concerning the lifetime of the solar cells, I completely agree with the point of my colleague that I think the issue has been more or less solved. I mean, I had the Konarka cells for like 2 years and the efficiency just stayed the same. They're just well sealed in 2 glasses, so indeed I believe it's just a technological issue, how to really make the product cheap and how to really, purify the material, but all these things are rather more like engineering exactly more than science, I guess. But I don't know much about it. So my most concern, most interest lies within improving the efficiency of the cells, still going a little bit further, above 10%, reaching 15 or whatever. And I believe a lot of work can still be done. And the beautiful thing of organic electronics is that we have an access, or we can synthesize the structures, the semiconductors with desired properties. Basically, as soon as we know what do we need and how things work and what are we looking for, the goal can be reached. Silicon is silicon. It's just a silicon. It's a single thing, and we have all the variety of different organic molecules and different properties. So that's the nice thing. And the strategy how to achieve it, I believe, I see a lot in the conferences people saying that they list power conversion efficiency limiting mechanisms. My expertise lies within transport recombination, and what they mention is just transport, but actually it's transport and recombination of the charge carrier. So it's mobility and lifetime of the charge carriers, which are both important. So in principle, mobility does not need to be improved if you can improve the lifetime. That's the thing. The carriers can move slowly, but as long as they move, they don't recombine. Sounds perfect. Yeah, exactly. It's simpler to achieve. And this our work showing that this non-management recombination, this long carrier lifetimes, high carrier densities, to show that indeed there are mechanisms in the nature which allow us to achieve that. And we need to study those a little bit more and try to do a little bit better understanding what actually is the reason for that. Whether it's the 2D lamellar structuring, or what's the property that actually gives this, and how to go further on, how to improve that lifetime, and this. So I believe this direction has not been yet explored much, and I'm not saying it's easy because I cannot even answer the question what makes the carrier mobility better in the two different organic structures. Now, of course, there is also this chain stacking and all this short order, long order, all these things, but it doesn't turn out to be so simple. So all I'm saying is that understanding a lifetime is probably going to be even more complicated.
So we should find a new recombination mechanism to break this recombination to the life.
I think it's more like no Angeline than less Pyrrhus.
Many being said on improving efficiency. Actually, I was spoken about lifetime. Being in device business is still to say that actually it's resources of materials, people who make materials. To make it very highly pure, this is one of the very challenging tasks. And second thing is, I don't know, many people agree with this, I guess. Many university labs produces materials. They produce in milligrams level, not in gram levels. But if you have material which you cannot scale up, if your synthesis group is not scale up, actually, that actually doesn't help very much in the community. So this is one of the very challenging tasks. I say this because we in CSIRO have scaled up the small molecule that I spoke in this conference. We try to scale up in kilograms, and the problem we had was purification. We can scale up, but the purity is a limitation. So I think this is one of the bottlenecks that every chemist has to think. I'm not a chemist, so the responsibility does not lie on me, but as our distinguished keynote speaker will agree to this. So the purity of the materials, it's not only the structure, design of the molecules, but I think always keep in mind that the chemical route to the achieved materials, high mobility, and the structures that delivers low recognition rate when you blend with acceptors. I think it's one of the key, as Amanda mentioned, and our results shows that. So I think a lot of actually heavier salt are also coming back to chemistry. So.
I have one more topic I forgot to talk about. It's about water-soluble solar cells. So the question maybe to Kees, I guess. So I guess the question to Kees, but to all of us also, that I've seen that P3HD, water-soluble P3HD, is available commercially even. I don't know, has anybody studied it, its properties? And the question is also, do we have a water-soluble fullerene? Yeah. Does it have some good mobility, bad mobility, or has somebody tried to mix those two and make a solar cell out of it?
We've had a little bit in our lab, and the mobilities tend to be terrible, device efficiency very poor. So I guess the morphology is really destructive of the side use.
I'm not going to go on materials. I want to reply with saying I will pose a problem on the physicists. We discussed this in a little group at the table. Okay. Imagine you have a perfectly random bulk heterojunction. Interfaces in all directions. On that interface, the charges are formed. How come that a one-direction field helps? You see the problem? Thank you.
I'll think about that.
Sorry, does any physicist have an immediate answer to that?
The mechanism that we're thinking is just wrong. If field-assisted association is just the wrong mechanism for that, what happens is that the donor receptor interface cannot be possible because you would never have more than 50%.
But there's also the local field coming from the donor receptor, which actually might be opposite to the work function. It could be, So my point is that this local field, as you see at the interface, it could be opposite to the work function difference between the metals, but it's probably the one that could help separation of the charge carriers.
So really, the work function difference between those metals is not what determines the dissociation of the excitons at all. Very good.
I haven't changed my mind since lunch. Is that it probably doesn't have.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm a bit out of my depth, I suppose, because I'm not so used to thinking about the sorts of systems that are obviously being discussed in very great detail here. And my formal education in solid-state physics is a bit low, so there are a lot of concepts that I sometimes feel I don't fully understand. And as Chris was pointing out, even with crystalline organics, it's not always clear that some of the language of solid-state physics carries over with no modification. But I guess, in terms of the things that sort of stood out and the questions that were raised in my head as I watched everything, would be that there seem to be some fairly fundamental issues about the chemistry and the electronic structure that maybe are not understood. It's not clear to me why there seems to be only one or two good donors and now two good acceptors. I mean, the range seems very limited. And in particular, I guess the comments that were being made about sulfur sort of stood out in my head because it's not really clear to me, maybe this is just me and I just need to read it out, but that the electronic structure of sulfur is really well understood and why it plays such a key role in, for example, the thiophene polymers that are obviously such a good and widely used donor. It also seems to play interesting roles in electron transfer in proteins that are not widely understood, that I've found out from recent reading that I've done in other fields. So maybe there's something here, and maybe the models that are very often used for computation in theory and molecules are getting something wrong about that at a fairly fundamental level.
Would a chemist like to address why we have sulfur in many of these compounds?
I think part of it is just history. If you want to make conjugated polymers, and you think in terms of bandgap engineering as it has been done always, then you don't want to have too many phenyl rings because they are too aromatic. So you go to a less aromatic ring, and then you have pyrrole, and you have thiophene, and you have furan. And if you go, in that direction, you go less and less aromatic. Right? So first pyrrole, and then thiophene, and then furan. Thiophene is the limit, because furan is so unaromatic that polyfuran is just not, you're not going to hold it. You know, it's just going to fall apart. So polythiophenes were like nice, not too aromatic structures that are reasonably stable, and you can make variations. That's why they are there, and not because of that sulfur. But sulfurs are in TTF and in extended TTFs and in all kind of 60s molecular salts. And I think, I don't know too much about it, but I think sulfur, selenium was then even better, right? The super sulfur. And that was done, I think, in order to improve the intermolecular interactions. So that is one reason that sulfur can do something good.
Okay, well, think about that. I mean, I read something. Isn't the ionization potential of thiophene is close to benzene, isn't it? Is or thiophene and benzene? I was reading a paper earlier today that seemed to say that thiophene is more like benzene than either pyrrole or furan in a sense.
Yeah, but the whole when you make a polymer, you're not talking about the individual thiophenes anymore. I mean, you have to think a little bit more holistic there. Right? I mean, it's about the bigger structure. Then they are not individual thiophene units. They are part of the structure. If they were totally individual thiophene units, there was no conjugation.
I agree.
So I guess my perspective is pretty much biased by limited understanding of things. But so I agree with Seth. I think the place where there's a lot of room for improvement is, I guess, the molecular end. So the molecular motives which are used. Because, I mean, if one looks at the materials which are out there, I mean, maybe 100 different molecular motives which have been investigated properly, and I think there's so much more out there which we could try. And again, so I think the molecular motives are the necessary conditions at the molecular level. It's a necessary condition one has to get right. And from then on, it's more or less an engineering problem to get all the performance out of the molecular motive, to get the stacking right, to get the condensed matter aspects right. But if your molecular motive is rubbish, then that's not going to be fixed by anything. So I think the molecular side has to be fixed first, and then I can think about the nanostructure and the architecture. But those are things which are much more easy to manipulate, to improve. But one has to start bottom down, I think, from the beginning.
So, I agree. It's nearly everybody here. So that's just 2 points, my concerns about this field. Indeed, the efficiency of the fate of the organic photovoltaics is determined by efficiency, and I fully agree that the materials are an important issue. So the breakthrough in the photovoltaics come from new materials. As a physicist, I have problems a little bit with that because, and that's my kind of my appeal and message to young people: don't become a simple screener for chemists. That's exactly an expectation. Well, as a physicist, we really suffer from that. So our colleagues from organic chemistry, they just send a week 10 materials and say you have to screen them. Screen. So take your time and try to understand the physics behind, or try to understand the phenomena behind. And that's it's not always go in accord with efficiency growing. So that's my main concern actually in the last 5 years when I started doing independent research, when I became my own boss, That's second issue I would like to address is again from the point of view of physicists. We are not. It's a very interdisciplinary field, and well, I don't know how it is here in Australia or in the US, but it is in Germany. It's a very conservative country. So there's a physics, chemistry, there is biology, and that's it. And within the physics community, it's we still have an acceptance problem. People doing topological insulator, doing spintronics, inorganic semiconductors. They don't like this stuff. And then what we are doing, so they don't want to have our samples in their ultra-high vacuum machines and do some tests, photo emission spectroscopy, RFS, whatever. But it's good news, and I have this has been discussed in many talks already. And that's really really good news of this meeting and this workshop, that we found several fields where we really can be proud of good physics. One example is spin physics, so just colleagues sitting left to me probably will confirm that and give some input to this. So it's really, 20 years ago, and maybe Joe Shinar will support me in this, nobody was really care about spins and this polar pair, so CT states now, or triplet. Who was thinking of triplets in 1990 in context of OLED? Now everybody is doing triplets, light emitting dyes, right? The same came with organic photovoltaic. So there's an interesting field research, fundamental research field, and in the field of OPV, related, I admit that, with the development of new techniques, or maybe using of old techniques developed for some other fields, but just to apply them. It's a problem. It's not simply JV, and it's not simply current voltage. Measuring every day in 10 samples. Sometimes they are very complicated, like the colleague here on the left side. It's really complicated techniques and to understand. But and then in the final sentence, but our problem, I guess, maybe you disagree or agree, how to explain people what you're doing. So what is it good for, this Rabi oscillation? Or what is it good for, this, kind of spin transition between zero and sub-levels, in terms of organic photovoltaic? So it's a long story, but actually, so just to summarize, take your time to understand the physics behind. Secondly, use new techniques, actually that's it, maybe.
So my comments are actually a very similar spirit. We're at quite a meaning about a complex systems, and I think it's, as we know, it's difficult to understand a complex system by understanding its constituents. If you don't understand the constituents, you're never going to understand a complex system. So I think as a community, this community is very good at understanding material science and chemistry and things of that nature, but there are a lot of very fundamental physics processes that happen in these materials that's not clear, A, what they are, B, how well we understand them, C, how they're going to impact in improving these types of systems. And I guess that's the sort of questions I like to look at. How do you improve that understanding? Well, it's difficult. People are self-interested, I think, and I think one thing this community can do is to try to make it clear to people outside of the community what these materials might be good for them for other things. So one of the reasons I'm here is because I was interested in spin physics, with a single spin interacting with many other spins. And the reason for that is that if you want to make a quantum information system, that's a problem that arises in other systems. And it turns out that organic materials may be a very good system to study that problem. So I think trying to map problems in organic materials to problems in other systems will generate interest with people from people outside the community who have different techniques and different ideas and different approaches. And that's the sort of thing I think it would be good to generate, to have new ideas coming into the community. The other thing is that there's a joy in doing science for the sake of science. So I'd like to sort of put the idea out there that everyone should spend some of their time not directly focused on trying to make the best LED or the best cell, but spend some of your time doing something you really enjoy and generating crazy ideas, because they're probably going to be useful at some point.
I'll echo that last statement, actually. It's a very good one to make. The reason I got into this field is because I'm a chemist by training, and I understood the problem of the physicists who were being asked to screen polymers, materials. And I think I've told one or two people the story at Cavendish Labs, where I don't think it's the start of the organic electronics, but certainly electroluminescent polymers kicked the field off. And in the early days, if you ask Paul Byrne, he'll tell you that he was regarded as a scientific leper in the chemistry department. No respect for him because he was working on polymers. But he provided the polymer to the physics department, who then made the first device, well, they made saw electroluminescence. And it was a very, very short period of time after that when the chemistry department were supplying physics department with too many samples, and it was lobbing them across from the centre of Cambridge to the Cavendish lab. And we're getting very frustrated because you haven't made a better device with my new polymer. So that relationship, it didn't go wrong, but it wasn't working optimally. And I recognise that it's very important to have someone who sits in the middle who understands both camps. And that's where I think I sit scientifically, to communicate with both fields and to respect what the limitations are. But that actually brings me to the big point that really builds on what I was saying in the opening panel session. It's not like we're trying to make something here that doesn't exist. Okay, there wasn't, when they were trying to make cell phones, there wasn't like a cell phone, or pieces of paper and the old landlines what they were competing with. So the competition was really quite mediocre. Here we have, you can burn coal, okay, basically. The thing that we're trying to make can be made very, very simply. And even if you don't like burning coal, there are a number of photovoltaic technologies that are quite good. If I told you to rush out now, here's $50,000, any dollar in the world, go and buy photovoltaic panels, you've got 2 or 3 choices. You can put on the roof of your home or in your backyard. So we even have a closer technology that we're competing with. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, why is that not taken off? Why do we not all rush out and buy photovoltaic panels? And it's because those technologies have problems, and we need to learn from them what their problems are. Why do we not buy silicon immediately? Why do we not have cadmium solar panels? They've got problems, and so we need to learn as a community what those problems are so that we don't end up going down those paths. That's very, very important. On the issue of, you'll get a chance here, Joe. I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll. I think the big power this community has, and I sound like a broken record, but it's chemistry. But when we look at that efficiency chart, which is an exponential growth, I once made a statement that our efficiency was doubling every 4 years. Until this year, it looked like a bad statement to make, but it is getting pretty good. We are doubling every 4 years. That doubling has come about through chemistry. And when we actually ask the question, how many chemists in the world with all the tools and capabilities they have, how many do we deploy in this direction? What is classified as the biggest question we have to, biggest problem we have to address is pitiful. How many people are trying to make the next drug versus the next polymer for an organic photovoltaic solar cell? It's a very, very small number. We need to embrace those people. We need to bring them in, and that's where we'll make our biggest impact. And I think then, once we've done that, lifetime efficiency will just come. And Case, I think we need to move away from fullerenes. We're stuck on fullerene. It's got us going, but are we in a rut? Do we need to move away from fullerenes? Do we need to understand why fullerene works and then try and move away from it and not use it as a crutch? I think we use it too much as a crutch. Really? How can you follow on from that?
Okay, I plead guilty, I fail. Actually, I have a message for the younger generation out there, for the young assistant professors, the postdocs, the graduate students, the undergraduate students. Like almost everything else in life, as I see, things will probably not turn out as well as you hope or as bad as you fear. And I'm saying that also from the perspective of somebody who's worked on OLEDs for many years. I remember 10 years ago, I gave some plenary talk on an overview of OLEDs, and I was very excited about OLEDs back then. Still am, but even much more so. And I bumped into a colleague who was going to give a similar overview of LCDs. And he said something very, very important that I always remember. We were talking about OLEDs versus LCDs, and we said, you know, your OLEDs are advancing very rapidly, and that's wonderful, but don't forget, you are aiming at a moving target. So even as your OPVs are getting better and better, so are the amorphous silicon, so are the crystalline silicon, so is the telluride, the SIGs, all others. At the same time, that should not discourage you. Because look around you, there appears to be room for all of these. There are commercial crystalline silicon solar cells that have been around to a first order approximation forever now. And they're still going very strong. At the same time, amorphous silicon solar cells are also going very strong. We have a company right where I am in Ames, Iowa, that's the first company in the world to actually make an electronic product in a roll-to-roll process. They make, it's called power film. They make hydrogenated amorphous silicon solar cells on polyimide substrates in a roll-to-roll process with a stabilized efficiency of 5.5%. Compare that to the Konarka handbag with the 2%. And still, that should not discourage Konarka, because all these things are time dependent. So as you go out there, the problems are there. Yes, that's why all of these technologies, each one has its problems. They're all getting better, and there appears to be room for all of them, even for non-PV solar cells, not solar cells, non-PV sources like solar collectors that just take the heat from the light from the sun, convert it into heat, and convert that into steam, and then turbine use that to power. There's room for all of them, and there probably will be into the foreseeable future. But whatever you do, always try and think out of the box and steal from any other field of science or technology that you can. Good ideas, steal and bring them into your own area. Finally, I think Paul has some words to say, but the last thing I'm going to say, let's stop talking about solar cells and go out and enjoy the sun before it sets.
That's a great place to finish, and Brisbane's sun has come out after 5 days. So. Well, I'd just like to make a couple of points, and I've been listening to all my learning colleagues, and a couple of things occurred to me. Firstly, that I couldn't agree more with the using a physicist as the screening methodology for a chemist. I find that a very difficult thing to accept. And I suppose you've all had a chance to kind of think about how COPE is evolving, our centre's evolving, and we've taken counsel from many of the people here in how we do these things. I know Paul's not here, but I think he would agree with me that a priori we don't screen materials, we design them. And we design them from the perspective of the device and what we're trying to achieve. Okay? So I would fundamentally agree that the way forward in coupling chemistry and physics together is in a far more intelligent way than we maybe have done so in the past, and that's what we're attempting to do. One of the most important scientific things that's evolved, I think, out of this couple of days, and it's been very enjoyable for all of us, and particularly our students and postdocs, is this concept that condensed matter physics is back on the front foot, okay, when it comes to organics. I'm, from a local perspective, delighted that we've got Attila Moser, Barendra Singh, Alamantis Pivricus is coming down to join us very soon, okay? These are people that I think I really enjoy working with and thinking with, because the concept, as we're formalizing it in the transport problems, these are condensed matter physics problems that maybe our friends in amorphous silicon thought about in 1962, okay? And we're thinking in very similar ways, and I think we'll make progress in that, and that's a very exciting thing for me as a condensed matter physicist. So I want to put transport on the table, and the spin physics concurrently, as an area where I think CMP can make a big difference. And as I say, I think you've got some rising young stars in Australia that can make a difference here. And I guess I'd conclude by maybe just from our perspective thanking everybody who's come to help us with this workshop. We appreciate we're a long way from everywhere. And we also appreciate that we're not the centre of mass of the universe, and that if we are to develop our own field, and I think you agree that organic optoelectronics in Australia is coming on leaps and bounds, I hope, we need your help to do that, and that's what we're getting over this couple of days, and I hope you will continue to help us in developing our science and the field down here, because it's a great place to do it. We've got plenty of sun, and we've got actually quite a lot of political will at the moment in this field. Okay. So with that, I guess I'm going to hand back to Sean, and on behalf of COPE, just thank everybody very much for their contributions.
So I guess we just have a few minutes before we reach 3 o'clock deadline, so I'd just like to open up to a complete open discussion. So first of all, we've heard lots of discussions from the front of the room. Let's hear some opinions from the back of the room. So any thoughts growing up? Everyone in the back, yes?
I guess this is pretty general. I don't know if you're directed to, but is there any hope from this?
Please use the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Is there any hope that with some of these charge transfer polymers that we could possibly move away from an exoponic system, more into the conventional? Question?
You're asking about an organic material that supports 1A exciton, like silicon? Or
yeah, well, wasn't that mentioned that some of the free charge polymer yield is quite high in some of these charge transfer materials? I can't remember who mentioned that.
Well, the closest we've gone so far is in the best single crystals of organics that we can make. And that's about as band-like as we can expect. And it's It's not very big.
So that's a no?
No, it's not a no. Actually, it's an excellent question. Just great challenge.
I had a proposal in last year. This is a bitter story. A proposal that was not funded to look at that. If you actually look at the efficiency of organic solar cells, the place where we lose the most energy is the fact that we use a type 2 offset between a donor and acceptor, and we always throw away at least 50% of the original photon energy, and at the moment even more than that. And so that is a limiting factor, and we've had a number of talks trying to get around that. What you're actually saying is we have polymers that have the capability of doing that, and I think you're absolutely right, and we need to move down that path. Because whilst fullerenes, sorry Chaz, whilst fullerenes are working for us at the moment, we mustn't get stuck with optimising everything around the fullerene. And the charge transfer polymers are a great way to go.
Any other comments from the panel on that?
Yeah, the route is actually quite simple. Make a high dielectric constant polymer that you can dope at the end, make a homo junction out of it, and you have something that doesn't have this problem.
That's very compatible with the idea of making it water soluble.
Yeah.
Get it for free.
Yeah, homo junctions have been realized for organic materials. So we've built some, at the IFED, some PIN homo junctions were made by doping one side P and one side N. We need a PIN there as well because, as I've shown, if you put P and N together, you get a shortcut. But it is possible you get to very high voltages on that. But as mentioned before, if you then can crank up the dielectric constant, you really get a strong bound excitons, and that would be a great step ahead.
Well, from my perspective, I might have more an appeal on all of you. Well, I'm pretty much a young researcher, and I kind of find my place in this field, and it's that there's a place for every one of us. But for me, the problem is always kind of to see what is needed. So what I really, really would love to see at one point, and we have so many researchers here, maybe at the outcome of this meeting or at the end of the year, that people would actually just put down what they think they don't know or where the biggest questions are. So I have to say, about the 100 papers or whatever I read last year, people only write the nice things, the things they really know. They never write about the things they don't know. The important thing for me here was actually not what was said in the talk, but what was that between the lines or inside the whole talk. So that opens up for me, that is something which we all don't understand. And as I hear now in the last discussion, there were so many questions and I have to think about that. And there are so many young people who are excited about environmental research and saving the planet, but we need a little bit more guidance or more approaches to actually get into that. Because just chasing 5%, which what all of us did at the beginning, and I had the idea that after a year I had 5%, so that pretty much crash landing. But and I can't agree more with Vladimir about the screening of things. I was probably the first PhD student here at Pope who was just confirmed in a very conservative physical environment. So we have to face this problem, we have to face the acceptance, but we are a new generation. But we need a little bit more guidance from the whole more senior community. And one advisor is not enough. It has to be a whole network of the whole field from all perspectives, because no one can know everything. That's what I think about it. But please don't crucify me about that. I know that no one wants to give away the secrets or its future projects and grant applications, but that's how I feel a little bit.
I see a whole network before you of co-advisors.
I love that in the last 2 days. Probably back to handful now.
Maybe just come in. That's exactly a little bit of problem. So if you think of the now becoming model system, P3HT, PCVM, this combination has been available for a decade or for more than a decade in a very reasonable quality for the whole community. And this incremental development of understanding physics and material properties, morphology, it was a kind of big discussion in all conferences. Now we get these record values on the materials like, PTB1, PTB7, or donor 1, donor 2, or I cannot tell you guys, like this. So this is now, completely different level. And that's what I am a little bit afraid of. This development we learn. We all learn in the same way you wanted to do that. Now, P3HT PCBM was a working horse, and for 10 years. And people like Kees Hummelin, who made this material available for everybody. And he didn't sell it in the beginning. He just gave it. And hundreds of people, I guess, right? And this was exactly what saved the field, actually. And there was many serendipity. Think of you. No, okay, you did it, of course. It's 2.5%, but for Linz it was serendipity. They hired a postdoc. They hired a postdoc, and he just took a completely different solvent. And so it's. But think of this: 10 years or 15 years, we have been working on P3HT PCBM, and now we say no, it's no ring, 5%, nothing more. And that's my concern a little bit, that we can go on with this. You ask for people like looping you for PTB7, and he said yes, give me your card, but he threw it immediately.
There's one little problem with the field, and the problem was not at the fullerene side, because we had this one compound and we made enough, and everybody in the beginning at least was satisfied with it. At the other side is the polymer. So why do you see all these papers that you have seen in the last 15 years? Because first, there was only one polymer available around Santa Barbara. It was MEH-PPV. It came from Santa Barbara, and it was trusted. You could trust it because Fred knew what he was doing. And then there was this Dutch initiative, and Philips was involved, and they had what we call MDMO-PPV, and then it was called OC1C10. And there was this huge batch of MDMO-PPV, and that's why you have hundreds of papers on MDMO-PPV. And then you have P3HT, and indeed, the P3HT is made on large scale. They know how to do it, constant quality, and that's why you work with P3HT. Because imagine, what is the problem with those record polymers that you see now? All the ones that you see from Solomon, we won't have them. Yeah, and if we don't have them, how can we contribute? And even worse, all the polymers that are from individual groups, and people that come to you as a physicist and say, "Take my polymer, this is a one-time batch. It's only half a gram maybe, and you will never have the same quality. And you better be glad if it's really what they say it is." No, because and this is a warning to the physicist. If you really get tired of measuring stuff of chemists, be sure that they know what they have. Because most chemists have no idea about purity levels that are necessary for semiconductor physics. Right? So you just don't make it easy for them.
So unfortunately, we are pretty much out of time. So I think we should thank our invited guests. We're really traveling a long way and sacrificing a lot of their time and a lot of hard work. So let's give them really a lot of time. We have two last pieces of detail. The first is the poster presentation winner. And I'll just go ahead and give the title. So, Operational Lifetime Studies of Dye-Sensitized Solar Cells by Ben Langley. So he has $200 more for the.
Oh, he would love that. And 500.
And then for the last bit, I have to come back here, pardon me. Have some of this, and then I have to invite Susan Grantham to come forward because she has really contributed enormous amount of time. She has labored endlessly the last couple of days running around, so we'd like to thank you with a very small token purchase at least an hour ago.